Hi, I'm Mernas Campbell, founder and CEO of Kimia and Kimia Reset. And I'm really passionate about helping pharmaceutical sales professionals to feel confident about using technology, using digital content to connect with healthcare professionals effectively. And it's a human element of digital transformation that really interests me. The enabling people to use technology is what I'm really curious about. And to explore this topic, I've been interviewing inspiring pharma leaders to learn from them and to bounce ideas and to share their perspective. And what I found that all of the people I've interviewed, what they have in common is that they really care about the people behind the tools. And I'm so delighted to have James Harper, founder of 28B, speaker, facilitator, trusted Veeva expert, and juggler to have with me here. Hi, James. How are you doing?
Hey, Melissa, thank you very much for having me on this. Looking forward to your first LinkedIn Live experience.
I know, we're both virgin in this, aren't we? So, James, I kind of thought it might be useful to share with our listeners and audience how we met. I think it's quite a curious story because you and I met online. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was through either a Veeva workshop or a Reuters workshop when we were both frantically commenting on the discussions. And then we suddenly realized we've got so much in common. And I think Chris Wade was with us as well, commenting away.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a Reuters event on omnichannel and the steps that needs to be done. And it was, forgive me, I hope anyone that was speaking at it isn't listening, but it was a bit usual. It was the same stuff being spoken about, and the chat kind of lit up with things that we thought weren't being discussed and that maybe should be discussed. And you're absolutely right. One of the topics of conversation was the people behind the process. And I'm sure we'll talk about omnichannel a bit later, but there's often a lot said about it, but it kind of fails where the rubber hits the road in terms of implementation. So I'm pretty sure that's where you and Chris and I kind of got into the thick of it in the chat, and that led to let's have a conversation outside of that webinar and see if we're as aligned as we thought we were, and it turns out we were. We're both really passionate.
And it's curious how I kind of like we get and build a relationship online. You and I have not met in person, have we? Yet? Yeah. But I kind of feel I already know you, and we've got a kind of like a meaningful discussion and relationship, which is amazing. Shows the power of digital and how we can use it to our advantage.
It does that, and shared passions, shared language. Our Venn diagrams of what we do for a living overlap quite considerably. So it's quite easy to feel like we've known each other for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a real pleasure to have you here, James. And I'm kind of like going to kick off and ask you some questions because I know that you've got a quite interesting background. You studied ecology at the University of Sheffield, and I'm just curious what led you to get involved in communication and pharma in particular. And I think we were chatting with each other on LinkedIn, and I thought it was really curious that you were talking about the sexual dimorphism of the common household spider, which is your passion, and so I have to make sure you don't talk about it. But how did you get from that to pharma sales and pharma communications? Tell me about that.
I'd like to say Brownian motion, a collection of circumstance that has led me down a path to where I am today. A journey of 1,000 steps, sometimes backwards, sometimes sideways, sometimes with my eyes closed, sometimes. But essentially, ecology is the study of plants and animals and their interaction with the environment. I studied the sexual dimorphism of the common house spider. I can fill you in on that time. It was a great degree, really interesting, but it wasn't very applicable to a career. If I'd done environmental sciences, etc., it would have been. So I struggled when I came out. It was just in the time where there was a lot of competition for fairly new jobs in the environment and ecology. And so I struggled to find one in that space. So I was working in warehouses and doing any sort of temporary job I could pay the bills. But I knew I had a science degree. That was some value. So someone pointed me at the Telegraph on a Thursday. The back pages of a Telegraph on a Thursday advertised all the jobs in science. So I picked one up, and there was a job as a medical rep for a company called Elan Pharma. And it came with a car and it came with a salary. And my camper van was on its last legs. My bank account was in its in the negative. So I picked the job up, and that was pretty much it. I didn't really know what it entailed. No, that's not fair. I kind of knew something about it because my father was a GP, he was a senior practice in a general practice, and so I knew something of it. So when I got to the end of my onboarding and training course with Alam Pharma, I knew a lot more about it, obviously, at that point. So when I spoke to my dad and I told him what I was doing, I was a little concerned he might see that as a, why didn't I end up as a doctor? Why didn't I end up in the environment, working in the environment like I'd hoped to, etc. I was expecting that. He's a nice chap, but I was still expecting that. But what he said was that actually he really valued the time he spent with medical reps, because there's he can't read all the scientific papers, he can't keep up with all the scientific literature, so he would value the conversations he had with the reps, especially the ones he'd known for a while. He would see 3 reps a week. That was his allotted time, and he'd try and arrange it so he saw reps from sort of competing spaces in the same therapy area close together, so he could get put the views together and add a bit of pinch of salt, and that would genuinely help him in his clinical practice to keep up. So it was a great start for me. And it kind of set me out, and I've always been pretty much from then on a bit of a champion for us reps out in the field and the good that we can do as an industry. And I've always been standing up for it, even in the face of things. And I'm glad to say that the way we got the vaccines out in such a speedy manner and the effect we've had, I believe it's brought shone a good light on our industry. But I think we could have that light shone in a more positive way for many years before.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I'm so glad your dad was supportive and he saw the value, because what I think a lot of people don't realize, healthcare professionals are bombarded by information. They don't necessarily need information. They just want somebody to tell them a story and put meaning and draw kind of insight from that information. And, they prefer stopping what they're doing, talk to a representative, providing that representative talking to them about something that's relevant to them. Because it kind of gives them a break from reading emails and data. And, if they're getting that value, then they're more likely to continue having that relationship. And yes. I'm just so glad your dad encouraged you to join the pharma industry. I bet he's really proud of you. He's really proud of you for setting up 28B. So you set up the company in 2010 to support pharma in all things digital. So what's been your journey? What are you doing now? Are you still focusing on all things digital, or have you narrowed down your focus?
No, so I made the unusual move from being a rep to working in agency. And when you think about medcoms, PR, and creative agencies, there's not a lot of us that moved from the field team. And funnily enough, I was out for dinner last night with the chap that started it all, Rob Wood. So Rob at the time was my product manager when I was selling Seroquel for schizophrenia. And his wife, Cherry, set up a PR agency, PR medcoms agency called Athena Medical PR. And their first big account was in schizophrenia. So Rob said to his wife, you should have a word with James. He knows all the psychiatrists in London. He seems like a good chap. I did ask Rob last night, genuinely, did you want to get rid of me, or did you really think I'd be of value to your wife? But either way, I left Zeneca and joined Athena. And I loved it. I loved all the working with KOLs, the meetings. It was kind of like all the fun part of being a rep without some of the, the struggles of being a rep, getting to see doctors, having to get through past gatekeepers and the slog and the travel and all the rest of it. So I like a duck to water, really enjoyed that. And Cherry and I grew that agency from a couple of us to 18. And then I let my... I was headhunted with a chance to run an agency up in Cambridgeshire, which is why I'm now based here in Huntingdon. The agency was in St Ives. Very difficult to run a PR agency outside of London, but I gave it a go. Anyway, moved around through different agencies, and then, funnily enough, ended up back at Athena. But Cherry had left at that point, and there was a new managing director, Dr. Steve Carroll. And our last big account was with Xarelto, Bayer, a mega brand. And the product manager said, could you do some, we need to do more digital. So this was 12 years ago. And Athena was about as digital as an Excel spreadsheet. And I'll admit, I was about as digital as an Excel spreadsheet. So rather than pretend we could do it, we made the interesting choice or strategic choice to introduce what essentially was a competitor, a company called Big Pink, run by Wayne Page, and they were brought in to do the digital, and we encouraged that. By the end of the year, they had all of the budget and we had none, because they were shiny, they were new, and they were digital, but they also did what we did. And I thought that was kind of insane that happened. And so it spurred me on, along with the launch of the iPhone 3. There's the original iPhone 3 that was launched that year. I was inspired to set up 28B to support small, medium, independent agencies with the digital, so that they can compete with large digital agencies, etc. And that's what we did. We set out to do everything and anything, but then fell in love with Veeva and what we could do with reps, and shifted from websites and apps and system builds to really focus in on enabling reps with technology and data, because I kind of wish I had that back when I was a rep. I carbon copy paper, and I used to do the call reporting. I'd fold it up, put it in an envelope, it'd go in the post to Dendrite, IMS, Walsh.
Yeah.
And then about 3 weeks later, I get a floppy disk back with an Excel spreadsheet on. So, the opportunity that technology now presents to a field team in terms of understanding customers and orchestrating value is immense. And that's so I chose to reshape the whole company to just deliver in that space.
Yeah, I mean, it's so clear that that communication element in healthcare is a passion of yours. So how do you think pharma can improve the industry communication as a whole?
That is a really big question, and it's a really important question, and we should be asking it more. So thank you for that question. It has to do, so I'm going to use this quote again, and full credit to someone else that you've interviewed recently, which is Paul Sims. So Paul and I were debating the future of the rep at an event, which I think you may well have attended online.
Yeah.
And he read out a quote right at the beginning, and this quote has absolutely lived in my head ever since. And it was from a UK pharma managing director. And within that quote, he said, through Paul, he said that with the backlog of patients that we're seeing in the UK and the rest of the world, it's now a moral, ethical obligation for us as an industry not to waste the time of our HCPs. And I thought, gosh, that's really important.
I remember that. It was a tumbleweed moment after he said it.
Yeah.
Quietness,
and it's absolutely true. So how do we ensure that we are not wasting their time? So we need well-informed, skilled, competent, and confident reps that understand their customers' needs in depth and can orchestrate the content and communications that customer experiences, so that we add value and that we create meaningful conversations over time rather than have the same conversation every time. So moving from rep 2.0, which was a bit of a sandwich board rep, which is what I was, we were definitely scientifically based. I understood my science. I have a science degree, as I can see that Kimberly also has an environmental science. She comments in there, So I've never been shy of the science, but we had a fairly limited sales aid. It's the same 5 key messages that we bang out time and time again. We need to move away from that to rep 3.0, which is the ability to have in-depth conversations, to understand our customers' needs, get it down to what is the job to be done, and then help the customer do that job, right? And that could be getting home on time. It could be patient oriented, whatever it might be. It's our job as an industry to understand that and then to address it. And that can be through field teams. It can be through digital communication, non-personal, whatever it is. The doctor doesn't care what function we're from within pharma, whether we're MSLs or KAMs or reps or marketing or the managing director or whoever it might be. They want to have a consistent, meaningful engagement with that company. And that's where omnichannel will come in, etc. But I believe that omnichannel should be powered from the field. The best data set we get on our customers comes from the reps interacting, or the KAMs or the MSLs interacting with customers and building that data set. That's how we add value.
Yeah, and I think that requires a fundamental change in mindset and shift in mindset, because I think the days of going and dropping 3 key messages is way gone. Some of the metrics we use are outdated. And I think if you're truly delivering value, if you are working with healthcare professionals on their agenda, they want to see you. If what you're delivering is going to help their pain point, addresses their key challenges, they want to engage with you. So there's no barriers. It's just, I think, if you're just thinking about ourselves and what our need is without considering the pressures they're under, which is a lot more now compared to 3 years ago, that's when there's going to be a disconnect. So commercial salespeople are commercial people. Whatever you ask them to give is what they're going to deliver. And for that reason, I think it's really important to think about what KPIs we're using to measure performance, moving from vanity KPIs to things that are value-based. In your view, what are the things that we need to measure if you're measuring value? And more importantly, what should we stop measuring?
Well, okay, so very good question. We want to ensure that we're adding value at every touch point in a consistent, meaningful way that creates an ongoing conversation and experience, not this and this and this. It's important to think about engagement versus experience. We're trying to create that experience. Part of creating anything is evaluating how well we're doing it and then responding if we're not doing very well, closing the loop. What those actual metrics are is tricky, but you're absolutely right. What can we leave behind? Well, frankly, reach and frequency. If we're getting rid of the sandwich board rep, then reach and frequency. I'm not sure it ever worked, but let's certainly, as we go to fewer customers, harder access, more complex situations, and we're trying to address the job that's to be done, then reach and frequency becomes less and less relevant. It's a bit like saying, I use the analogy that, you can be, let's say we're running an in-person event and we got 30 empty seats and we fill all 30 of them. Great. Is that a great metric? We had a full house. If the presentation that's given is terrible, then it might actually be a negative thing. So why is the number of bums on seats without evaluating the impact of the content? What a much better thing would be ask those people as they leave the meeting, has it been of value today? And do you think what you've learned will change the work, anything tomorrow? When you go to your job tomorrow, will there be something that you're doing different? Is there a behavioral change behind it? Because ultimately, even if we're selling or setting up referral pathways or setting up an environment in which appropriate prescribing can happen, i.e. an MSL, what we need the customer to say, or sorry, I shouldn't say customer and MSL in the same sentence. What we'd want the clinician to say is that they agree to change something. Otherwise, there's been no value in that call. How you measure that change is where we go to next. Could be something as simple as NPS scores. It could be something as, doctor, will you now prescribe? Will you now refer? I mean, should we be embarrassed about asking that question? That's why we're there. And if they're going to say, not sure, then I haven't done my job properly. Can I come back next time and maybe we can expand on that and see what it is that's stopping you from prescribing?
I think you're making a really valid point. I know what metrics we could just leave behind, and I agree with you. The coverage and frequency is one of those. And I think I was actually saw some of the metrics by a client we're working in, and I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow. I'm going to challenge them. They want to see their target audience 3 times a year. And my first question is why? Why do you have to see them 3 times a year? And it's like, what is it that you're going to say to them? What are the 3 value points you're going to deliver in those 3 interactions? And do they actually need what you're going to deliver? So it's about really turning on his head and thinking about what is the journey you want to take the healthcare professionals on, and assessing whether that's a journey they're ready to take and what's the timeline they want to go on that journey. And I think measuring their travel along that journey is probably a better measure rather than how many times you see them. Because I mean, I'm working directly with some of the senior leaders in NHS, and I find sometimes to move the needle on a proposition, you only need to talk to maybe 2 or 3 people in a key account who are the major decision makers to decide what's the how to spend the budget or how to define the policy. And you can't waste their time. You need to be really relevant to them. But then if they see the proposition and they see the value in it, they put their resources behind it to make it happen. So we don't necessarily need to do everything ourselves. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently. They said, Myrnas, we put that on our newsletter. You don't need to send a mailing. So it's kind of like really understanding their need and responding to it is more important. I stopped measuring coverage and frequency back in 2005. And I think it's about the right person.
when it was exactly those words that you said to me when we were chatting the other day that made me think you have to be on the webcast, you have to be on our session on the 28th about vanity versus value. The fact that you've moved away from that so long ago. I have to. So one of the things that 28B does is we create selling effectiveness dashboards for field teams, right? In Veeva or whatever platform that you're using, that brings data points from the CRM together to make it meaningful for them so they can take action. And sometimes we do the requirements gathering, we go out there and we talk to people about what they'd like to measure. And what I'm trying to put in there is stuff that's valuable, that has some form of benchmark that they can measure themselves against. But sometimes we get a report from a consultancy firm that's done that part, and they say, here's the metrics that we want to display in that dashboard. And the last three that we've done, the last three presentations I was sent, it was like 15 years ago. It was reach, frequency, number of emails sent, this, that, the other. And not just that, like the number of emails sent, and then, but with no benchmark. What's a good number? You got to send 3 emails. What 3 emails? Why is an email a measure? What's in the email? What's it asking someone to do? This seems such, but then the challenge is yes, that's clearly not much value, but what is the alternative? How do you genuinely measure it, especially across large territories and large numbers of doctors? But yeah, the idea that I will convert this doctor because I send them 3 emails, even though I can't tell you at this point what those 3 emails are, is a tad naive.
Yeah, just because you can measure it doesn't mean that's the right thing to measure. I hate measuring surrogate markers. The ultimate measure is sales, is what you're trying to do, resonating with customers, and they want to use your product or not. That's the key measure. And it's binary. You either do it or you don't do it. Yeah.
Because we don't have that signature on the dotted line, right? So we take steps away from that direct measure, which is, are they prescribing more, right? So we can't see that. So we've got ex-factory sales or brick data sales. Then we've got the word of the doctor. Will you now prescribe? Then we've got the next one down, which in certain cases, people are uncomfortable asking, will you now prescribe? So have I added value today? Is there something I've talked about today that will change the way your practice? And then we've got what content with key brand messages did we share? But that's based on the assumption or our hubris that those will change. And then you've got, I saw them. So, I saw them without any context. Then we've got what content we shared. Then we've got some form of commitment. And then we've got the sales. They're all kind of important. They all need to be there. But the further you step away from agreed behavioral change, the less meaningful that measure is. Plus, what you measure is what you get. You said that. And if you're measuring reach and frequency, and I am honest about this, that back in the day, especially when I was at Lilly, don't listen, Lilly, were very, very focused on reach and frequency, very dogmatic about our call rates and what we had to achieve, whilst putting 3 of us on the same territory, by the way. So the doctors were just like, I'm literally not seeing him. I saw your colleague just a few weeks ago or even yesterday. I occasionally might have gone to see the doctors that probably had no chance of prescribing, or if they did, they would only do so very briefly just to bump my numbers. So if that's what you want to measure, how many doctors I see, then that's what you're going to get.
So James, tell me, what's your definition of the omni-channel experience?
It is creating a meaningful, consistent engagement across all of the channels and touch points for a customer to create a great experience over time. And I'm very keen on that idea that, we talk about engagement, but omnichannel is not engagement, it's experience. It's an ongoing conversation. So sales calls might be an engagement, but what happens in between? What do we add to it? A banner ad click is an engagement, but where does it go on to? So it's that consistent, meaningful conversation over time to create great experiences. And like I'll say again, the hardest thing, and you said this right at the beginning, is I am people focused, because the hardest thing about omnichannel is the people aspect, the person aspect. Omnichannel is more than a digital problem. In fact, it starts with an organizational and people problem. It's about integration, but you've got to start with, and you're right to ask my definition, each organization has their own definition. I can walk into a pharma company, one brand team has a completely different definition or understanding of omnichannel. Then the BI team have a different description and understanding. And then, so there needs to be one consistent definition within the organization. And then we need to beat down the barriers that exist between functions, from medical to commercial, from within commercial, you've got marketing and sales. No doctor cares really where you are aligned within there. They want you to know the conversations they've had with other people within compliance, regulatory, MSL, commercial, and all that stuff. But a good example of how frustrating it must be for a doctor is, let's say you're calling up your insurance company because or your phone company because there's a fault or you've got a question on a bill, and you have to put in your account number on the keypad, and then you finally get through, and the person says, "Can I have your account number?" You're like, "Well, okay," and then you take your details, and then you take your complaint or whatever it might be, and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry, you're in the wrong department. So I'm going to put you across. Could you mind holding?" You hold for 3 or 4 minutes. And the next person says, "Can I have your account number? Can I have the problem?" You're like, that's even in one single engagement. There's no consistency.
Connection.
So if a recruiter's coming in to see a doctor on a regular basis and they're not evolving the conversation, or they're going to see a different part, they see a KAM and then an MSL. And if it's like, do you guys not talk? Like, why am I having these individual engagements rather than experience? So breaking down those barriers, collecting the data and making it meaningful so that whoever is next to see that customer can see the full story, knows their needs, understands it, rather than resets the clock each time and has to go back. How annoying that must be for a doctor.
Very annoying indeed. We experience it ourselves when we're dealing with companies, so I can imagine that. So I think, James, I want to touch point on a post you put on LinkedIn. I think it was like controversial post, the famous the tombstone of death of a pharma rep. I can't like, that was the point. I really felt your vision and your values really resonated with me, and I just wanted to check with you, what's your opinion of the rep of the future, and has that changed since you posted that? I think it was about a few months ago.
It was June last year. I was on holiday. I had to say to my wife I was playing Wordle, not spending all my time on LinkedIn. But I couldn't miss out on this. So I'm going to reference Paul, the mighty Paul Sims again. So Paul Sims put a video out, I don't know, about 3 years ago about reps hunting doctors through a forest. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I actually was talking to him about it on Monday. I said that video, I found it quite offensive.
Yes, so did I. And you know, yes, there's some reps out there like that, but not everyone. In fact, I rarely, if ever, met anyone like that. We all took a pride in what we did. Bloody hard job, and I think it's a bit naive to think that's how reps actually are. So and I was inspired one morning just thinking about that video that I wrote and the day before, a client had said, "Oh, James, do you really think that COVID is the final nail in the coffin of the rep?" And so I made that post. And actually, what I was saying is absolutely not. I think human beings are always part of a complex sales and a relationship with our customers. You don't decide to prescribe based on a banner ad. You don't decide to prescribe based on even medical education or a good webinar. And frankly, you don't suddenly start prescribing because an MSL has set up a pathway between your treatment center and your referrer, right? And I think that's the naivety of thinking the future is just MSL, right? It's you need that person to push for and to convince and to show the evidence. So yeah, that post, I'd reached about 150,000 views, which is extraordinary. And I'd called Paul out on it, and then Paul joined in the conversation. Of course, as everyone should know, he's got about 36,000 followers on LinkedIn. So that bumped us up to about 250, and it was good. I had a good. I didn't know Paul up until then, but after that, we went and had dinner and we had a chat and realized, that we're both passionate about getting pharma to wake up. And wake up's not fair. I think they're woken up, but to get some change. And our Venn diagrams overlapped, but there was enough of a difference that in October we did an in-person event in London where we had that debate and we kicked off from that. So your question, coming back to your question, has my view changed? No, I very much believe the future of a rep is 3.0, which is technically competent, scientifically literate, business savvy. and probably harking a bit back to the RAD days, right, which was an inspiration for me when I was a rep. That, gosh, they've given that much, that much freedom to do the right things to someone in the field. It was quite inspiring. I think there's an element of that in there. But the Rep 3.0 is a connector. They're an orchestrator. They understand their customers' needs, and they have at their fingertips now more than ever such a huge array of effective content and channels in which to share that content. And they're basically orchestrating the customer's journey. They're also, if you get the materials right, like we do at 28B in terms of gathering insights, is we're building this rich profile of the customer's needs and challenges within the CRM. And then that data in the CRM can then feed the wider omnichannel engagement with that customer. So scientists call it sort of bottom-up digital, is make sure your field team value data, make sure that you've got the tools that can collect that data, get that data into your CRM, and then act on that data. Why? Not just so we can sell more, because it means we're adding value. We understand our customers in a deep and meaningful way, which allows us to respond, and move it forward and give them what they need to improve their clinical practice, to improve the outcomes for their patients.
Yeah, and as you know, I used to be a RAD at Takeda. That was the way I felt I could have the biggest impact on, aligning agendas with NHS and doing something that added value to them, added value to the patient, but also added value to my employer. And I've not shifted. That's why I'm saying coverage and frequency went out of the door for me over 20 years ago. But I feel you and I have the same passion about the people. I think what we did at Chemia during lockdown, we bottled our skills in terms of engaging with healthcare professionals, and we created Chemia Reset and Chemia Reinspire. And our platform has helped so many sales professionals, sales managers to get their arms around this way of communicating with healthcare professionals. And specifically what we found is it really increased their confidence. It helped them to improve the quality. And we've seen dramatic increase in their face-to-face and digital contacts, as much as 5 times within 6 weeks of doing the training. And I think we actually are, similar to you, are alliance partner with Veeva as well, which is amazing. But I think it's been absolutely amazing to have you here, James, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you online or offline. And the topic you talk about is actually something I'm really curious about, and I'm writing a book about the pharma 3.0 and what are the components as individuals and also as organization we need to put in place to be able to facilitate that. So it'd be really good to have your input on that. But I just wanted to close saying thank you so much for your input, James. I don't know whether we get kicked out, but it's the first time I'm trying it, so we just carry on talking for maybe for a few more minutes. But I was just going to say, if you're looking for a solution around the tech, talk to James. If you're looking for a solution around changing your sales team, sales management behaviors and mindset, just get in touch with us. We both would love to help you to facilitate that journey of digital transformation for your organization. Do you have anything else to add, James?
Only I love these sort of conversations, whether they be on LinkedIn Live or podcast or just one-to-one. So if there's anyone out there that's just curious or has something interesting to share, some new technology or some new insights, seeing the comments from Kimberly and Jay's, etc., love to engage with you, just learn more. I have found that I have learned more by just listening and understanding what people do than just forging ahead with what I think is right, although I can be guilty of
that. Yeah, I know. Thank you, Kimberly, for your input. I think Jay has put a question there. I'm not quite sure whether I understand the question. Have you read it, James?
I struggle with it a little bit at the end. I think maybe a mistyping at the end, but yeah. I'm guessing moving to, so the whole, and it actually speaks to Kimberly's point as well, which is, for years I have heard people from global organizations at the senior level talk about this. Same with modular content, same with AI, and there's these great aspirations, but where the rubber hits the road, when you've got a brand team trying to make it happen in an affiliate, it evaporates by the time it gets there. And actually that's what we see with technology as well. I mean, I love Veeva, love the people that work there, I really admire the company, they're very important to us. But if I've got a criticism, is when it comes to people actually use it, they're not brilliant at bringing them on board. There's not a lot of support there, which is great. That's why you're there. That's why I'm here. And I guess if we were really good at that, we'd be out of a job. But it is sometimes distressing to see that these guys out there in the field or the brand teams are just scraping 10 to 20% of the opportunity that these technologies represent.
I think that's maybe a conversation for another interview, but I think people have been distracted by the shiny stuff. They invested in the tech, they invested in the digital content, and I think somehow they forgot to bring the sales reps on this journey with them. So I think that a lot of them are realizing now, 2 or 3 years down the line, that they need to engage the end users. Otherwise, investment in the platform and the technology is not going to give you the return you're looking for.
Mindset, skill set, tool set, that order. As an example of how you can get distracted by it, I was speaking to a very senior player, and globally they have a problem that in only 10% of their calls are materials being used. Now, we all know you've got to be an exceptional rep to sell verbally, just verbally, right? So no materials used in 90% of their calls. And what was his suggested solution was, what if we, oh gosh, he's going to know who he is.
It's a missed opportunity. I mean, often when I'm talking to healthcare professionals,
started to about a shiny technology we could build into the sales aid. It's like, no, we haven't won the hearts and minds. We could make it the shiniest detail aid in the world. They won't use it because you haven't convinced them of the value of that content. Clearly, we have to go back to basics, brilliant basics, and build back from the bottom.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's such a missed opportunity. I often actually find when I'm talking to healthcare professionals, they say, come on, jump on Teams. It's so much easier for me to show you, trying to verbalize it. How can you verbalize a budget impact model or a complex clinical information? Just show them a graph or numbers. They can see it, be on the same page as you. And also by getting them online on a Teams or Zoom or whatever they prefer, you get to get input from them. Make it interactive. It doesn't have to be one way, but that's such a missed opportunity. Anyway, we can carry on talking forever, but I just think we need to bring this to a close. Thank you so much for those of you who supported us with your comments, and thank you, James, for making time to chat to me. I'll probably invite you and we chat about something else, but I look forward to working with you. Take care and goodbye from both of us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.